My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. What if creating a wealthy life could be as simple as being who you are and doing what you love? You have a unique internal design for wealth. This formula is encoded in your soul blueprint, and like your fingerprint, it's unlike that of any other human being. It's called your sacred wealth code, and it is written in the universal language of purpose and prosperity. Your sacred wealth code isn't an investment guide, a pyramid scheme, or a sales manual. It isn't even a follow your passion to success guide, although passion is an important part of your wealth code. Instead, it is a key to unlock what your soul already knows, what makes you unique in the world, and how you can leverage your purpose, your desire, and your own set of superpowers to connect with your personal path to wealth. My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Prema Gurreri, uncovered the sacred wealth code and its accompanying body of work while on an internal quest to align with her own purpose and prosperity. Prior to discovering her own wealth code, Prema had created a well-known yoga studio and wellness center in Washington State. An acclaimed Vedic astrologer, spiritual teacher, and coach, she nevertheless struggled to make things work in her business and her life. After a harrowing dark night of the soul, during which she was called upon to release both her business and her marriage, she decided it was time to find out why, despite so much hard work and sacrifice, she was still so challenged around money and success. Using her insight as a Vedic astrologer and intuitive, Prema undertook a deep internal dive and emerged not only with the knowledge of how to change her own life, but with a universal formula for creating true wealth and success that can be applied by anyone in any field at any stage of life. Prema joins me this evening to discuss her discovery and her best-selling book, Your Sacred Wealth Code. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Prema Gurreri. Good evening, Prema.
Good evening, Victor. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for joining us. This is a fascinating story. So please share your story and how it led to your realization of the Sacred Wealth Code.
Well, as you mentioned, I did have a yoga and healing arts center. And, I have to say, even before I got to that point in my life, there was many times that I would question, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? And I was a yoga teacher for many years, and I would still is this it? A yoga teacher? And I was always given the guidance, actually, under the umbrella of being a yoga teacher, you can teach whatever you have to teach. So that's what I did for many years. I figured that out differently since then and branched off in what I call myself since then. But what's important about that is I did open that studio that you mentioned, and it really was like this world-class center. It was just state-of-the-art, everything from a yoga wall and the healing practitioners that were there. I was training my own teachers. And I really just thought, just down to my deepest knowing, that I was on purpose. But I was also questioning that, because if I was so on purpose, why was I not personally thriving at the level, including the prosperity level? Even though this was a six-figure in sales business, not a lot of it was coming to me. So you mentioned that dark night of the soul, and after having the center open for 5 years, I had lost my marriage. I really didn't have anything else I could borrow, any other money I could borrow. And I wasn't sure how I was going to keep the doors open. And I had a landlord who wouldn't let me out of my lease early. So with a lot of soul searching, especially because I really thought I was on purpose and I was using all my spiritual principles, I was just given the guidance, I need to let this go. But that was really a vulnerable place for me, because I really hadn't let on to any of my clients or students that I was really struggling on that financial level. So I felt super exposed. And I don't know if any of you listening in have ever been where you just wanted to hide what was really happening. Well, that's how I was at that moment. But I really was just up against the wall, and I had to come out of the closet, so to speak, that I was having this really challenging time. And I had to let it all go. And in that, I really recognized where I was stuck in my shadow. And well, first I didn't know where I was, but I knew I must be. So I just vowed to figure that out because I didn't want to be in this position again. And I also I was a single mom. I had 2 kids at home. And so from there, I just vowed to stay on my knees in that dark night of the soul until I figured it out. And in that, I went through a lot of shedding of fears and walking through my own dark night. And I realized where I was stuck in my shadow. I realized I was afraid to ask for help. I realized I believed that in order to be like valuable, I had to figure it out all on my own. And these were just beliefs I had taken on through my own traumas and stuff. And this whole piece about doing it all alone, along with not using some of my really high value gifts and really staying stuck in the shadow of using what I was good at, or I was told I was good at, like the administration and the sort of the to-dos and organizing around my business. So in that sort of bearing of my own soul and peeling back these layers, I realized really what my gifts were, and that I was standing in them to a certain degree, but I wasn't fully standing in them. And it was time for me to not only come out of the closet, really own my intuitive side, my unseen gifts, as I want to say, the ones that I was everyone's best kept secret for. And also I vowed to never do it alone, never just go forward and do it alone. So the Sacred Wealth Code was born out of that time, and it evolved from there. But within a few months, I was able to really hone in on my gifts of going in really deep with people. And I was working with less people for a lot more money. And I hired a team, my astrology coach, our mentor I went back to work with, and I hired a heart-centered business coach. And that's the way I run my business. If I need help, I stay in my gifts, and I hire other people and collaborate with other people in their own gifts as well.
Let me ask you something, because what you've described, I have many, many friends who are yoga teachers and have healing centers and do intuitive work. And not every one of them, but the majority of them seem to struggle with the ability to say, I need help. Why do you think that's so?
For me, I know that literally when I went down to the root of it, from my pattern, I was identified, and that's how patterns get lodged in, for us. And we take them on, not always because we sign up for it, but, it was literally that I translated that's how I got loved if I did it all. And, when I think about that, the question you're asking me, I think that when you are leading or you are teaching, there's sort of this leading edge that you're on. And I think there's also a notion and a belief that we should already know it all. And we should already have it figured out. And I think that maybe the beliefs are slightly different for each and every one, but I think that that's the area that we're getting triggered with, which is some of the shadow side of even the leader in the Sacred Wealth Code archetypes and even the celebrity. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things when people are looking to you, you feel like, oh my gosh, I should know the way.
So how did you come up with the concept for the Sacred Wealth Code?
So it came through me. And so in Vedic astrology, there is an actual scientific principle, and it is called Adana Yoga. And literally it is where your purpose and your prosperity planets, where they intersect in what I call your soul blueprint, which is your Vedic astrology chart. And at this intersection of purpose and prosperity, where these planets come together or where these planets are placed, what I began to notice is this is actually where your highest value gifts are, the gifts, we have lots of divine gifts, but which are the ones the world is going to value us for? These are the ones, because they involve your purpose, they involve your wealth, which really is a sense of fulfillment and is very unique for each and every one of us. When you engage and use those gifts and give them to the world actually will recognize you back for those gifts.
That's fascinating.
So that we find a lot of us are doing what we're good at. I've been doing plenty of what I'm good at. When I ran into that, when I lost everything, basically. But what are you extraordinary at? What did you just were born with a PhD in? And you don't always know what that is until you really tell yourself the truth about it. And the book takes you on a journey to do that. And you peel back some of these layers that maybe have been holding you back from really realizing what your true gifts are. But based on that Vedic astrology principle and my intimate work with people and my own soul searching through that very challenging time when everything was stripped away.
That's fascinating. Vedic astrology and business development sound like an odd pairing. Why did you choose to approach your business and financial teachings that way?
Because I started to see through the study of Vedic astrology, which is a really deep study, and it is part of, the yogic tradition. It came through the Vedas, these 6,000 plus year old texts as yoga did. I really started to see how you can see every area of life. And I don't use it for prediction because I believe that can rob us of choice. I use it to help us understand ourselves better and understand the world better or our worlds better. So I could see everything through that. That's why I call it the soul blueprint, your Vedic astrology chart and what's happening now as far as divine timing goes with the planets. So I'm really attracted to business. I'm really good at that. That's part of my gifts. And I've been an entrepreneur all my life, pretty much.
My guest is Prema Gurreri. We're talking about her book, The Sacred Wealth Code. And we'll be back with more of Prema after these words on the OMTimes radio network.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this evening is Prema Gurreri, and we're talking about your sacred wealth code. So you had that dark night of the soul. You started realizing these connections. How did you develop the concept for the sacred wealth code?
So the concept just started to emerge as that's what it's kind of all my work does this, Victor. It's my own life journey and this was life and business journey. And then I sort of start to look where I've come from, and I actually can see the path that I traveled. And what I also notice is that I'm also usually right away teaching, I'm usually one step ahead and teaching what I have just traversed, because that's who I just happen to be attracting. So the Sacred Wealth Code has formed and refined over the years, because I've been teaching this, for almost 10 years now. And at least I'm not saying 30, okay? Some things I can say 30 years about or 40 years about. But I got the tap on the shoulder about 4 years ago to write the book. And it took me, I had to get the 2x4, and then I went ahead and wrote the book. And the book is written in a self journey, but I've been doing Sacred Wealth Code readings and working with clients in lots of different ways, whether it was the career or a lot of entrepreneurs in their business, or maybe this is the book you want to write or the foundation you want to create, and helping them to understand their sacred wealth code, because I can look at it straight from your chart, and I do that through the readings. But the book, I started to teach people in workshops and retreats, so that because I believe that, look, we all are connected, and if we want to, we can tune into our own soul blueprint. Maybe I can articulate it in a certain way, or you can in a certain way, but we're all tapped into it. And I really have a mission to help people to not only be able to trust themselves better, but to also be able to listen in closely and be very attuned to their own intuition, to energy in general, and to their soul blueprint.
So we have listeners out there, and they're going through their life, whatever their profession might be, or their avocation, or their calling. How might their wealth code show up for them?
So their wealth code might show up for them either in the shadow or the gift, because your wealth code, as far as your highest value gifts go, after working with people for a while with this, what began to emerge is the archetypes. There's 23 archetypes, and literally they just kind of showed up, and they're like, archetypal languages are a soul language, so everyone can make it very, very personal, and each archetype holds literally like superpowers, the high value gifts, but also there's a shadow side as well. So just with that little prelude, when you are going along in that, say, your career or your business, and all of a sudden you start doing something maybe that you haven't been doing before, someone presents you with an opportunity and you just light up. You just light up and you think, oh my, like, where has this been all my life? And you just dive into it. And it's like you've always known it, or you've always been doing it. So our gifts can show up that way, because maybe they've just been in a closet for a while. But also your sacred wealth code can show up where you, like for me, where you were stuck in the shadow, things are not working out, you are struggling. And then we want to look at, where am I actually stuck? What part of the shadow? And on the other side of that is the light of your gifts. Because like in the fourth pillar in your sacred wealth code, it's sometimes, the greatest challenges are our greatest gateway to wealth.
Now, let's talk about the pillars first. So what are the 4 pillars that are part of the Sacred Wealth Code?
So the first pillar is purpose. And even the prelude that gets you here is in the first part of the book. I take you through a process, because it's a workbook, a playbook. There's exercises. There's an online portal where I'll lead you through them. There's meditations. And I help you to understand what wealth is for you, what it means for you, and what your actual wealth dream is, so that you're not going down a road of wealth and then you get to the end of the road and you're like, this isn't what I want, which I think has probably happened to all of us to a certain degree. And once we know what is the wealth that we even want, we dive into purpose, which is harnessing your soul's big why and understanding why you want that wealth. Because when you know why you want it, you know the purpose for it. And that's like the vehicle that gets you to that intersection of purpose and prosperity. And then we have the second pillar, which is your passion. And, your passion, I call this the essence of fulfillment. And it's literally the fuel that will get that vehicle of your purpose to that intersection of purpose and prosperity where your sacred wealth code lives. And this is passion, not just for what you're doing as far as your gifts go, but any way the world, you light up your world. I love nature. I love to create things in my garden. I love deep conversations with people and, many things. And it may or may not be directly connected to my work, but when I engage in those regularly, I have the fuel to do what I've come here to do. And then the third pillar is your high value gifts, wielding your superpowers. In this part, I really help you to understand at least one of your high-value gifts. We really pull the curtain back so you can realize what are some of those gifts that you have that you may or may not be aware of or using. And then the fourth pillar is what I had just mentioned before, which is your greatest challenge is the unexpected gateway to wealth. And here's where we find out where are you locked up in the shadow. And there's some processes to help you to release that, again, so that you can connect with more of your high-value gifts before you dive into the fun part of the book. Not that it's all not fun, but of understanding and choosing your archetypes, or like I like to say, your archetypes choosing you.
Let's talk about third pillar for a second. What are some of the superpowers that people have hiding within themselves?
Yeah, so let's... sometimes they're I'm going to call them the unseen gifts. Okay. So like with the great nurturer, this happens to be, an archetype that's greatly empathetic, is very collaborative by nature, super connective, and is so loyal, sometimes can be loyal to a fault. One of the other archetypes that we'll just mention here, the king, which can be very, have this incredible long-range vision, also be super courageous, and knows how to get desired results. And so I could go on and on about high-value gifts, but here's the thing. If you notice the things that I'm saying, those high-value gifts, depending on who you are going to be very uniquely expressed.
Okay, I understand that. It's funny, you were talking about the caretaker and the nurturer who sometimes are loyal to a fault.
Yes.
And I actually could identify with that. And at the age of 65 this year, I actually made a change where that loyalty came to an end because it was misplaced loyalty. And my personal wealth increased a great deal because of that change. And it took me all those years to come to that understanding, but I did come to that understanding.
I'm so glad that you shared that, because it really does shift things tremendously. I mean, that's that shadow side of overgiving. And again, underneath anything that we have in the shadow, when we dig around and look underneath that, and I teach this in all my programs, that we have to find out what the value is. And it's not going to sound really sexy, like what I was, identified with, that's how I got love, when I could do it all by myself. Well, I figured out that wasn't serving me, but, I was also, had to let that go. That over loyal one is a tough one, because it's hard not to be loyal or to be seen as someone who's not giving.
And not only did the rewards come to me financially, but also in terms of respect, which is something that I really craved and was not getting in my former position.
Awesome.
Absolutely. So you touched briefly on the archetypes. You mentioned a couple of them. What are some of the other archetypes?
Yeah, so the leader. And notice when I'm saying these archetypes that they are, archetypal language is a soul language, okay? So a different story may open up for you or me or anyone here listening in. And that's a personal connection with that story without having to articulate it through our minds so much. So we've got the leader. There's 23 archetypes, 3 for each planet, 1 for the north, 1 for the south node of the moon. We've got the honorable warrior, Mars, with the energy we've had this summer at the time we're doing this interview. We've had the honorable warrior, we've had Mars and its archetypes just really stressed. That's what I want to say about that, and causing some heat and some problems. The engineer and the strategist also belong to Mars. We've got the teacher and the sage, the muse. the artist, the connector and the communicator, the merchant. Saturn, some of Saturn's archetypes are the organizer or the administrator. And we've got the magician and we've got the mystic as well. So that's a few of them.
And can someone be a combination of more than one of these?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are some of your archetypes. Usually there's 3 to 5 archetypes, sacred wealth code archetypes in your sacred wealth code. Now we have all these aspects within us somewhere, but are they in your sacred wealth code? I mean, we have like a relationship code, if you want to think of it that way, and a way we connect with our spirituality. This focus for this body of work happens to be around wealth. So some of your wealth codes, some of your archetypes, like when I do a reading, I will see where those intersect, and those planets, those archetypes literally like hold hands. They work together. And then there's also some personal identifiers, depending on where they might be located, that actually helps focus them even more so.
My guest this evening on Destination Unlimited, Prema Lee Gurreri. We're talking about her book, Your Sacred Wealth Code. She also has oracle cards and a journal that come along with this, which we'll be talking about later on in the show. Prema, please tell our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your work.
So you can go to sacredwealthcode.com, and when you go, take the free archetype quiz, because you will find out one of your Sacred Wealth Code archetypes. You'll get some fun training on the back end on how to play with it, a beautiful printout of that particular archetype. I do readings. I have a business academy. I work with people individually as well as my Sacred Wealth Circle, where we're embodying this work. The book you can grab there on my website. You can also just go straight to Amazon and grab the book and the cards both right there on Amazon.
And we'll be back with more of Prema Lee Gurreri and Your Sacred Wealth Code after these words on the OMTimes radio network.
You're listening to OTR FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Have you bought into the idea that you have to work hard for your money, that business is hard? I will share some dynamic access consciousness tools to get you out of your own way so you can create a business that actually succeeds. Join me, Simone Millisers, on The Joy of Business at 4 p.m. Mondays Eastern.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this evening, Prema Lee Gurreri, and we're talking about your Sacred Wealth Code. So before the break, you were talking about the 4 pillars and the archetypes. Can you share a success story that you have for someone who worked with their Sacred Wealth Code?
Yeah, absolutely. So many of them. Okay, so there's one of this just happened recently. So one of my clients, she left corporate, okay, and she was trying to start her own business, and she'd been doing it for a while, and she had been in HR, and she didn't want to be identified with just an HR person, and she really felt like, when we got down to it, she really felt like she is the helping CEOs really become kings of their companies by helping the vision to go all the way through to whatever product or whatever service they're creating. And she had to get through her own shadow, and she really wasn't making much of an income at all when I met her. But within less than a year's period of time, she turned that into a six-figure income. And what's important about that is she just was so willing to let go of whatever was in her way, which she was really stuck in her shadow quite a bit. And she was also in kind of a challenging soul cycle. That's another aspect of Vedic astrology. And in a place of really kind of feeling alone. It's a very deep spiritual cycle. So it's kind of hard to step out in the world when we want to retreat. And you know what? She was just willing to break through anything in her way. And she pulled in a couple of clients, and she's reorganizing an amazing construction company. And she is finding that not only is she very, very well equipped to do what she's doing, she's having to duplicate herself by helping them hire out every little piece that really isn't in her gifts, but she can see where that is needed within the company.
Interesting you mentioned that, because there's a tremendous demand for WBE, or women-owned business enterprises, in the construction industry, especially here back east, I'm sure, where your client is located. And she's actually doing that, or has done that, at a wonderful time when the construction industry has blossomed and the demand for women and minority business owners is tremendous.
Well, and she's actually in New York, and one of the things that we were just sharing that in her last session that she got to do, and I'm sure this is going to be okay with me sharing this, is that her one of her clients that she's working with, one of the things she wanted to help really drill down for them is like, really, what's your company's doing well, but what's your vision on a service level? Because purpose always needs to have that service side, and one of it was helping, and this is one of her passions too, helping bring more women and minorities, being a minority herself as well, into the industry. And so they're coming up with some ways that they can serve more women and minorities coming into, not only coming into the construction business, but also how they can do projects that are, serving, those who need housing and such. So. Good stuff.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important, especially in today's world, in today's economy, and the importance of women and minorities getting involved in business enterprise is really important.
Well, and one thing, Victor, is, we can say our success, can be measured by money, but let's remember that wealth isn't necessarily just money. In my definition, it's everything you need to fulfill your purpose. And I see that reflected in Vedic astrology as well. All our purpose houses are followed by wealth houses. And that could mean the money you need, the time, the freedom, the security, the self-expression, or the service to others. And underneath that, coming down to the purpose for wealth, fulfillment. At some level, like for me, wealth underneath all of it for me at some level is a level of peace and freedom. But what we actually need as resources to acquire, to do what we came here to do, so that we can have that deeper meaning, we can have that fulfillment. And money just kind of gets clouded over the whole thing because it's our common currency of exchange.
Absolutely. In my personal story that I shared before, not only is the financial compensation important to me, especially at my age and the stage of my life, but the respect and also the ability to teach. I am a teacher by nature, and that's what this new position has afforded me the opportunity to do, to use my superpower, which is to take young people and show them and teach them how to do the things that I've been doing for the last 40 years, and they love it when I do.
Well, and isn't that a beautiful thing? Because then you can see that whole reverberation, or like the pebble in the pond as you teach, it's going to ripple out and touch so many people.
And the funny thing is that a lot of these kids, when I teach them the business end of it, are fascinated by my spiritual path and stuff like the radio show that we're doing right now, and some of the other spiritual pursuits that I have. So it's a full 360-degree teaching, and just wonderful, and it really fills my soul with joy.
Well, and you find it in different ways. I have a young man client. He's just turned 30, and he actually works in construction. We're speaking about construction here still, but he does. And actually, the owner has asked him does he want to purchase the business over the next 5 years, which we've been evaluating, and he's probably going to do that. But what he loves the most, he's very good at the craftsman that he is, but it's actually training the teams. And he does have this teacher within him. So we're finding a way to incorporate that so he doesn't get lost in being the business owner.
Wonderful. That's really wonderful. What's the biggest mistake someone can make when changing careers or opening a business as it relates to their sacred wealth code?
Well, I would say doing something that doesn't involve your high power gifts, doing something that somebody else tells you you should do. Here's how it showed up for me, and it actually had to do with my yoga center. So when I opened the yoga center, just before that, and for the few years before that, I taught at a big hall where I rented space, and I also had a private studio at home where I worked with my private clients and had smaller groups of people. And my husband kept saying, no, you need a big studio. And I did need a bigger space, but we lived in a place there wasn't that many buildings. So we lived on an island across from Seattle. And so he saw a building coming up, and he's like, this is a really beautiful space. You need to look at this. And I did. And I couldn't quite see it at first. And I saw that this was going to create something more than what I had envisioned for myself, meaning I was going to have employees, and I was going to have teachers, and I was going to have, rent space out for practitioners and such. And there was a part of it that wasn't 100% for me. And I was I was listening to other people, but there was a part of me that already felt like, oh, that administrator in me is going to be really working hard here. And I didn't fully listen to that. I heard that voice, and I just kept pushing it aside. But when I look back, not that I should have done it differently. It led me to where I am now, but there's always many paths to where you're going and what you're creating. But if I had listened to that voice was that alert to I was going to be in part of my shadow. And I do wish I would have. So my advice is that really feel into it. And that's, I have to say, under the underpinning of everything I do, that's why I take people through so much internal process, is so you can get in tune with what you're already sensing and feeling. And that's how your soul, that's how your intuition works, so that you can hear those clear messages. And then if it's just that you're afraid to say no to something, or you're going to disappoint somebody, you can work through that and really get to what's yours to do. If what's because sometimes it's presented as a great opportunity, like the young man I talked to you about, but we took some time really going through that. And in fact, he's going on a long distance trip to really feel the world, and before he ties himself down to this business, to make sure that's what he really, really wants.
There's a lot of young entrepreneurs in the world today. What one big truth would you share with them?
Just what I was just saying is to really, if you don't completely 100% trust yourself, and I do believe it's a lifelong process, but all the answers you really need are inside of you, and you can't always access them by yourself, but find somebody who can help you access them so you really can trust your gut, so you really can trust your heart, because that's how you'll stay in your gifts and you'll create wealth for yourself and wealth for the world, doing what you love to do.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned the construction, two clients who are in the construction industry.
Yeah.
What other types of candidates do you work with in the business?
Lots of them. So I've got clients who are they have a beautiful company where they've created alternative maternity gowns and such for women birthing. I have people who are transformational coaches, authors, artists, people who have a message that they want to get out, and maybe they're happy with their career, so to speak, but what they really want to do is they want to get this message out. So maybe it's a book they need to write. The client who's creating a retreat wellness center, bringing other people in to teach. Another client who created a foundation because they had the resources and they needed to find out what did they want to give back to the world.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And what makes someone a perfect candidate to work with your system?
That they are open to discovering what their wealth code is, to discovering their high value gifts, and they want to really live a purposeful and fulfilled life in alignment from the inside out.
That's really important, that you're willing to open that door and take that step, isn't it? That's crucial to anything that we do.
Yeah, you've got to be willing. Got to be willing.
Just briefly before the end of the segment, what's the difference between Vedic astrology and Western astrology?
It's a big subject, but I'll give you it in a nutshell. Sidereal zodiac is what we're looking at with Vedic astrology. Tropical zodiac from Western came from the Greco system, Greek. It's the same signs and everything. It's like a different viewpoint, and we keep time slightly different. Vedic astrology is the astrology of India, been practiced for 6,000 years, has many, many more layers. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I find Vedic astrology to be incredibly accurate and also to be an incredible lifelong spiritual study as well as a science.
And my guest is Prema Lee Gurreri. Her book is called Your Sacred Wealth Code, and we'll be back with more of Prema after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Change and growth are part of natural life, and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
Why should you volunteer with Meals on Wheels?
I never thought that 5 minutes could make so much difference in the lives of two people, but it has.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone?
Do flowers have best friends?
I don't know.
Hey, look.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this evening is Prema Lee Gurreri. We're talking about Your Sacred Wealth Code. So, Prema, in addition to the book, you also have oracle cards. Please tell us about the cards.
So the oracle cards are gorgeous. They're hand-painted paintings that I collaborated with an artist on. And in fact, the book and cards just won 8 awards from the Cover Visionary Awards. And the cards won Product of the Year. So I was I feel very, very honored. So I kept getting the message that I was writing the book and that, the archetypes wanted to come to life. And so I was like, okay, this was all a big undertaking. Had I known what it took to actually do this, I might have not done it. But that's a good thing that I went in not really knowing, because I'm so grateful to have them. Now, there's lots of different ways that you can use these cards. And the beautiful thing about pictures and certain phrases like are on the cards is that they can come into you from the right brain and from the heart. And we can have different interpretations than we might have going through the mental, even though that my intention was to write this work in a very timeless way. So the cards, you might pick your Sacred Wealth Code archetypes and want to just have them in their prompts. They have a mantra and a soul desire and a purpose and a shadow side. You might want to just have those available. But a lot of people like to do their own card readings. And I pick cards every day from this deck for deeper guidance on things.
You had mentioned the right brain aspect of it. Visualization, having that beautiful card to look at and to sense the energy of, is a really important part of this work, isn't it?
It really is, because, again, a soul language is what the archetypes are. So, again, even if I say the leader or the queen or the sage, a different picture probably, because we think in pictures, probably came up for everyone listening here. Now, the pictures that I have on these cards may be very different than the one that came up for you when I mentioned that, but they are very, very detailed, and they're all hand painted and with the right energy. And so what will open up for you in any given time of looking at the card or reading its definition, will be appropriate for the time, because all these aspects are within us.
Now, of course, we want everyone to get your Sacred Wealth Code, your book, but does one need to read the book first to use the oracle cards?
No, they don't, actually. You could just want to pick up the cards and play with them and get guidance that way. And there's a beautiful guidebook that comes along with the cards as well. And actually, if you go to my website too, you'll be able to, and you purchase them through the website or just go to the cards page. You'll also get some free training that goes along with them. But no, you do not need to. You can use them strictly like you would an oracle deck and just divine guidance for the moment. They are a great accompaniment to the book. And even there's a journal that is just going to be published as we speak. I've just finished it up, and that'll be the third in the trilogy. If you want to use the whole thing together, wonderful, or you can use the pieces separately.
And just mention the website. We're going to mention it again at the end of the show, but just mention the website one more time for the listeners, please.
sacredwealthcode.com.
That's easy enough. So now they have the oracle cards and they have your Sacred Wealth Code, the book. How do they work together?
So when you are going through the prompts of the book, or you're choosing your archetypes, you can choose cards along the way here. You could actually use the Sacred Wealth Code deck as you're doing some of the exercises before you ever go to the part at the end where you're discovering what your own archetypes are, to help you identify, like you might be asking in the fourth pillar, okay, what is my greatest challenge? And you might end up picking, one of those. Pick a card if you can't figure it out, or, because again, this is going to help you connect. And maybe you end up picking, let's say, the engineer. That's one of Mars's archetypes. And and the shadow side happens to be negative or self-judging or arrogant or aggressive or over-analytical. And you might figure out, oh, I am so in my head, and that might be keeping you from being in your true gifts of maybe problem solving or being trustworthy or focused on results, like are some of the gifts of the engineer, so that it could help you along the way as well.
So even if you haven't already identified your archetype, you can still use the cards.
You could still use the cards, absolutely. And in fact, you can use the cards to help you with pretty much anything, even helping you to understand what your archetypes actually are, because they are incredible. Again, you have these energies within you. One of the ways I love to use the cards too is, so maybe you've got to go and give an important meeting. Maybe you have to lead a project, or maybe you're being called to, teach something. You're a great teacher. Well, and maybe you're not feeling it today. So maybe you pull out the teacher, for instance, and you read over some of the gifts and you connect in, because they each have a mantra. What the teacher is to know is to grow, a soul desire to illuminate and artfully communicate knowledge which uplifts humanity, or maybe a purpose to be a conduit for learning, growth, and change in the world. And you can get infused with that energy as well. So you can be super deliberate about using them too.
And even if you know your archetypes and have selected your cards, the archetypes, the other cards can still be useful to you.
They're very useful. I actually choose cards from my deck after I do my process, which is outlined in the Sacred Wealth Code journal, which is about dropping into your heart every day, discovering what it is that your heart most desires for you, and then helping you to discover what an inspired action is to support yourself with that. And inspired action helps bring what's in the soul all the way down to the soles of our feet. We have to integrate through the densest part of our being, through our physical bodies. But I like to do it from the inside out instead of just bumping around in the world. And then picking an archetype to support me in that inspired action that day. Or maybe I have a project that I'm working on, and I pretty much am all the time, and I'll just randomly, tune in and choose cards from the deck to help me, what do I need help with today? Who do I need help with? How?
We have a lot of healers in our audience listening to this program right now. I assume that the healer is one of the archetypes, is it not?
It's not actually.
Really?
It's not. But healing is, because the archetypes are a little bit different than we're thinking of classic archetypes. They are depicted in English terms, but they are reflecting what the Vedic astrology, what the planets in terms of Vedic astrology, which has a whole bunch of mythology and everything that goes with it. So there's some of the archetypes that have that healing capacity, absolutely. And so, like the Great Nurturer is absolutely, an amazing healer. The Queen could be a healer for that fact. The Honorable Warrior could even be a healer, because it's, again, not about what you are, it's about the high value gifts you possess and how you're going to use them.
Yes. Absolutely. Can you share a success story from someone who's used the oracle cards?
Yeah. So there's a wonderful woman who she has been working with the oracle cards. She loves the oracle cards. And she's also written a book recently that is really helping change happen in branding. And so anyway, she uses the oracle cards every day. And in fact, I remember her taking one trip, and then she posted in one of our forums, "Oh my gosh, somehow my cards didn't get in my bag and I feel lost." So then I reminded her she could still tune in with them and those archetypes, even if they weren't there. But she has used them because she's doing a lot of interviews like this, but also doing a lot of speaking and in front of companies to help her to tune into the energy that she needs to embody or that the audience needs to hear. And she even spoke at the UN recently. Yeah.
That's wonderful. You had mentioned that the Wealth Code Journal is coming about. And what are the daily journal practices, and how do they help users create wealth?
So the daily journal practices always start out with tuning into your heart. And I actually have a short meditation that you can go online and listen to if you don't want to do it yourself, but I also give the prompts on how to actually do it. So I believe the heart really is one of our easiest ways to connect with our soul, with our intuition. So dropping into your heart and discovering what it is that your heart is most desiring for you, or desiring for you around something in particular on a daily basis. Not only does that help give you guidance, and then the inspired action I mentioned before, but it also, when you take that inspired action, it helps you to trust yourself. And again, that's one of my biggies here, and my underlying purpose is to help you live from the inside out and to really trust yourself. And so by tuning in to the heart and taking those inspired actions, and then you also have a whole archetype page where you can find out, are you stuck in the shadow of the archetype? Are you, what's the gift that archetype wants you to use? And there's an inspired action around that you learn. So you learn to tune in deeply and hear your guidance, and also tune in with your gifts and your shadow.
Wonderful. For our listeners who recognize that your name has a Sanskrit basis, please tell our listeners what your name Prema means.
It's the divine aspect of love. There's 20 different words for love in Sanskrit, and it is the divine, the impersonal aspect of love. It was given to me by a spiritual teacher. And when it was offered to me, I said, thank you very, very much.
Absolutely. And on a more down-to-earth love level, your love story, according to your website, has a very happy ending. Would you share?
Yeah, I just got married in May, the end of May. I just got married again. I just married the man that I married 20 years ago. We were married in a blended family. We created a blended family. We were married for 8 years. We were divorced for 7. We came back together in a love relationship, although we'd always been connected, about 5 years ago. And we got married we live in our dream home here in Washington, and we look at the water and the mountains. We got married right here in our yard with our dear ones with us.
Congratulations. Prema Lee Gurreri is my guest. Her book is Your Sacred Wealth Code, Sacred Wealth Oracle Cards, and Your Sacred Wealth Code Journal. Please tell our listeners how they can get these and find out more about you and your work.
sacredwealthcode.com. And again, take the quiz once you get there, because that'll get you one of your Sacred Wealth Code archetypes. It'll also get you some beautiful training, printout of that archetype. You can get the book and the cards right there on my website, but you can also go to Amazon. And if you do go to Amazon and get the book and the cards, super easy to get. They're bestsellers there, and they're award-winning too. And then come back to the website and go to the book and card page, because then you can get some free gifts as well.
Prema, this has been absolutely delightful. Thank you so much for coming on the air with us tonight.
It's totally my pleasure, and thank you for the great work that you're doing, Victor.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.